I had a good discussion with my Bible study group today. Um, it was about communism and how we have arrived at the conclusion that communism is the political arm of the devil, of Satan. And that is going to sound like a very bold claim that sounds ridiculous and it has no merit or any substantiation. That's because you need to know how the devil thinks and what it is that he's after. So, communism, at its conclusion, its purpose, uh, is a utopia. It's the kingdom without the king. It's them to go back to the garden themselves. We're going to go back. You don't tell us that we don't get to be in a utopia. We'll make our own utopia, and that is satanic. Um, the word Satan means resistor. If you are resisting God's will, you are being satanic. It's not always singular. Remember, Christ told Peter, "Get that I don't have to die." Well, then you are resisting God. So, and you see this resist. They even champion resistance. It's one of their war cries, along with "Eat the Rich" and "No human is illegal." It's one of their anthems. This resistance, and I always ask myself, resisting what? Oh, God. They don't like the way reality is structured, how it's ordered, and the rules that you have to abide if you want to live and be successful and flourish in this reality. There is such a thing as bad sacrifices. We saw with Cain and Abel. What was the difference between the two? Is that they were making two completely different sacrifices. Rather than correcting course and learning from his brother, hey, I'll just kill him and then I will be the standard. That that spirit is also in communism. It has to kill the thing so that it is the only thing left. The Khmer Rouge, when they took over in Cambodia, they established their words, not mine, year zero. They want to recreate themselves. They want to be their own God. I don't have a father. I am my own father. And what does that look like on a national level? It's getting rid of the history and starting from scratch. China, but the China that we know today is brand new. Because after Mao did what he did to China, it has never been the same, and it never will be. So, whenever there is this deep desire to recreate yourself in your own image, and the thought is you're doing so in order to bring about a your version of a utopian eventuality, that is Satan. Um, I want to talk about liberalism for a brief minute, just in contrast to what I just described. So, John Locke and John Stuart Mill, deeply devout Christians. And so when John Locke wrote his three, pillars of liberalism, it was very much from a Judeo-Christian perspective. Democracy was never to solve for the human condition. It was never to be utopian in scope. It never promised that, hey, things are going to be perfect and amazing. And it 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 was realistic in its scope and its aim. And the fruitages of it are undeniable. When I turn the lights on, they turn on all the time. An outage is an exception, which is pretty great. Most of the world can't say that. There are some countries where it's expected that you don't have electricity for 5, 6 hours every day. There are parts of the world that live like that. So liberalism, what it did so brilliantly is it took our our sinful nature, our inclination to be self-serving, took that and made it benefit everybody. Because if I'm a business owner and I want your money, I am going to make my business or my product as appetizing or as appealing as possible. So I'm being incentivized because I want your money. I'm being incentivized to do a good job. And by doing this service or providing this product, yeah, you're going to have to pay me some of your money in order to get it. But the idea is it's a mutual exchange for what it is that person is willing to pay for that service, that product. And it is a voluntary exchange of goods and services. That's capitalism. And it sounds really simple to us now, but when it was being drafted by John Locke in the mid 1700s, I forget exactly the year John Locke was alive, 17 something. He was a big fan of America. He saw America as a fresh start, and he was excited. He didn't get to see he didn't get to see a lot of things. The Revolution. He didn't get to see the Revolutionary War, so he died before 1776. Um, which would have been interesting to get his take on that because he's a Brit, but he loved America, so maybe it was a good thing. I don't know. The point is that John Locke, he was deeply Christian, and he wrote and planned out and mapped liberalism, the philosophy that it is. He mapped it purely on Scripture. The champion of the individual. The Bible deals with individuals a lot. It deals with groups of people a lot. When he's talking to Israel, he's talking to all of Israel. But Christianity is very much in relationship that you have to have. It's so principles like that the individual is the ultimate minority, and it is the category that needs to be protected from oppression. And so the idea was to have a government that would maximize the liberty, sovereignty of the individual. And look what that's produced. Also, we have human rights. That's a big deal. We take our rights for granted, but we get that from a philosophy based heavily in Scripture. And I'm kind of beating this dead horse because it is the antithesis. It is the exact opposite of communism. And so whenever I see a clear inversion, that's where I see Satan. Satan takes everything God makes and he just inverts it. That's all he does. So when I see this clear inversion of liberalism, this thing based on Christianity, and then you have its antithesis, communism, that's from the devil. So I hope I've made a convincing case. I don't have any statistics, or I'm not going to superimpose any, proof text. I just don't care enough. Argument is sound because I've explored all of these things at the philosophical level. Liberalism and communism are not just a series of legislative policies or rules. They're entirely different worldviews, and they are based heavily in the belief. You either believe that you and the collective you are God, or you believe that there is a God above you, and we're living in this capitalist because that seems to be the least murderous out of all of the other things that we've tried, and we're just going to do this thing until Christ returns, because within liberalism, though it's not ever explicitly stated, but because liberalism is not utopian, and it doesn't provide an end point, an end goal. It doesn't really go, it just kind of says this is the way that we ought to be as a society if we're going to have a functional one, going to not just end in tyranny. But it never gave a conclusion, like this is what we're leading toward. That's what communism does, that, not liberalism. And I suspect, and I don't have any hard evidence of this, is because John Locke wrote liberalism from the perspective of a Christian who it's already axiomatic that there is this end day, but it's not something that we need to kick off. It's not something that we're going to bring about. We just need to live as best we can we need to preach the kingdom, we need to preach God, and a society needs to be stable in order for people to be receptive um, to that message. There's always exceptions. Christianity does very well under persecution. It's one of the few religions that the more you oppress it, the stronger it seems to get. I don't want to get too off topic, and I'm almost done, but just reflecting on the clear antitheses that liberalism and communism are, they're mirror opposites. They want the exact opposite things. Um, and so having that understanding of liberalism, that it's not utopian, it's not promising you everything's going to be perfect and amazing at the end. Never does. And so I think because it's working with our human nature and that it is based on biblical principle, that is, for right now, being blessed by God. Is it always going to be that way? No. There will be a day where a liberal democracy will be obsolete because our king's back. So, but that's the idea of liberalism. It's useful and one day will not be. And then we'll have something a lot better. Anyway, let me know what your thoughts are. If you think I'm totally full of nonsense. Um, if you don't believe that communism is, its goal is in alignment with what Satan is trying to pursue, which is kingdom without a king. Um, yeah.